Hello guys and welcome to my channel. So I know that it's long time since I did a video and I posted a video on this channel. It's because I've been quite held up working on some stuff. So today I just want to do a short video on how to filter data using vue.js and Laravel. So I have this application here on this dashboard, and we have the backend. We have the API that I programmed in Laravel. So the API is having the data, and then the data you are consuming using vue.js. So the table that I'm going to use, or the functionality that I'm going to use, is this one where we filter the user logs. So there's the functionality where we display the user logs. So when the user logs into the application, we save some logs like the day, the time they logged in, the exact time, and then the log status, if it is log out or login, and then we have the Chrome, the browser they are using, the browser version, the operating system they are using, and the information like the device they are using, and if it is web, Android, and then the time that they logged in. Okay, so you can see that when they are all of them all are selected, we get all the data from all the users. But then you know that we have two different log types, so you may just want to see the login logs, or you may also want to see only the logout logs. So for example, here when I click on login, you can see that the data is filtered. Okay, maybe you may not see because it is there's a lot of data. Okay, but then if I select something like, let me select this, you can see that this person here, because these are just fake user, this person here has no user logs. Okay, but if we change to maybe this person, they also don't have the logs. To this one, no logs, and let's try this, no logs too. And what about this? And you see that one has logs. Now you can see that we are filtering by the user, okay, that specific user, and then you have the log type. This one is login. That's why you can just say that logout is just dashes here, and now the log type is login. Okay, log type is login, and log status is login. If we change this to logout, you can see the data has been filtered, and now we're just displaying the logouts, the logout logs. So the time the user logged out from the application. So we are keeping the time where the user logged in and then the time where they logged out. So if we go to all, it will now display all the logouts. Okay, all the logouts, all the logout data. And if we change this to login, it will only display the login data. Okay, so how do you do this with vue.js or with Laravel and vue.js? So with the Laravel side, there is no problem because basically we have three files here. The first one is this, there is a log controller, and this one is the one that is controlling the displaying of the log. So I'm not going to go into how I'm generating the logs. That I'll do maybe in another video. But basically that is, just do that when the user is logging into the application, and also when the user is logging out from the application, you have the events in Laravel. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm filtering the logs. So you have first this method where we are displaying all the logs, and if we go to the web to that, you can see here we have all the logs. Okay, these are all the logs, and and this one, the filter function here, it takes two parameters. You have the user ID and then the log type. Okay, so if the request comes with the user ID, and then so we have to, the request can come in two ways. It can come with user ID is equals to all, or user ID is equals to certain user ID. So if the user ID is all, what we basically do is that we get the log type. We just get the logs where the user ID is equals to that specific user ID. So you just find the user ID, and since those tables are related, the logs and the users are related, just get the logs that belongs to that specific user. And then if the user ID is not all, meaning that if there is logs type or logs type that has been sent, so log type, you have the logout or login. What you basically do, the first thing is just find the user, and then we find the logs, and then we filter based on the log status. And that's how we are filtering the data when somebody the changes, when event changes or the select changes. So this is the Laravel side. What about the Vue side? So the Vue side, I have two files here. We have the userlog.js. I'm using Vuex, okay, for state management. So you can see first I have defined inside the state, we have the logs here, and then we have the getters where we have the logs, and just set it to the value of the logs in this state, okay. And then you have the method, this action that is called fetch logs, and that is basically where the data is fetched. This for fetching logs, so that is basically where the data is fetched, okay, and displayed. So let's go to this filter log method or action. So what happens here is basically I'm just sending a get request to this URL. So you can see that this method here returns this data. You can see just return that data here. I'm just returning the collection of that data that is returned by this here user logs, and then I just return a collection, and I can get that data here. Okay, so since I can get that data, I'm just doing in this user log.js and this filter logs action. What I'm basically doing is to send a get request to get that specific data. And you can see here I am passing there the user ID, and also I'm passing there the log type. Okay, so if the user ID is 1, I'll get the logs that belong to the user with an ID of 1, and I'll also get the log type or log status. So if it is only logout or only login. And basically that is it, and you can see I just said that. And now since we are using Vuex and we are using getters, you have the logs here. Okay, you have the logs here. When that data comes, what I'm basically doing is to set the logs to the data that comes. So you can see you have the logs here. So when that data has been fetched, I just update this state and with the data that has come. Okay, so that's this side here, and now we have the display side where now we have the form, and then where the data is being displayed. So let's just go first to the form. So you can see the form. I have this form here. First I have the table that is displaying the data, displaying all the data here. And then we have the form. So this is the form. Where does it start? So the form starts, the input starts here. You can see the select here. This is where the user selects. And you can see we have the v model. So this v model is equals to user ID. And when it changes, I'm calling the method called filter log. So this method is defined down there in the script tag. So when this changes, this method is going to be fired, or this is going to be called. Okay, And what will be the value? So the value basically is going to be, I start with the selected user, which is the user ID. So basically, you know what we call a two-way data binding. So this select here is bound with this. It has been linked. It has been linked with this user ID here. Okay, so when the user ID changes here, it will also change in the form, and when it changes from in the form, it is going to change here. So the selected is all, but when I change, it is going to get the user ID. So you can see that I'm getting all the users, and I'm looping through the users and displaying. I will just display the username, the user first name and last name, but then the value that I'm going to take is the user ID there. So of course if you know Vue, you know what I'm doing there. And the same, I'm using that with the log type here. So the log type can be login, logout, or all. So when somebody changes, or when this changes, I'm basically calling the same method, which is user logs here, filter log. So filter log, you can see it is a custom method that I've just written here. But then we are now able to access from this component. You are able to access the users, and we are also able to access the log. So you can see I have the map actions here, and this action at first I'm just fetching the logs. I have this action for fetching the logs and also fetching the users, and then for filtering the logs. So when the data changes, what I'm doing basically is to call this method called filter log. And what does it do? Basically, I'm just getting the data from the data object here, and then I'm just calling this a filter log action that we just saw here. In this filter log, when I call it, what it is, I pass there the data. It is going to make a request to the API, and then it is going to come back with the data. It's going to update that data there, and that's why after it is updated, I have also these important these computed properties. It's very important because it is going to watch over the data. So when the data changes, it is going to update. Every time it changes, it is going to update. You can see, so it is watching the data. Every time the data changes, it is going to update. So you can see, and when I change that to login, it updates that data. If I change to logout, it updates the data. So basically that functionality is very important because you are watching the data here, and then we are updating every time it changes. So what happens is that when this changes, when this select input changes, it is going to call that method here, which is filter log, and filter log will in turn call this method called filter logs, and that filter logs is inside this file here, a user logs the JS, and what it does is basically calls this endpoint, and this endpoint is going to return the data. Okay, you can see that endpoint is here. So just like users logs, it is basically going to call this data to return this data. So based on the search, so you can see, for example, when we pass here the filter, we are filtering by the user ID 5, and then we get all. You see it returns the data. But then if we change that to maybe the user that has no data or login data or logs, and you hit enter, you can see still 5 has. So I just want to change to some user that maybe are not existent, and you can see you don't have the data. So that's why you can see if I change to the user that has no data, like the first user, you find that you don't have the data because it will call, and when it calls this route here, it finds that there's no data, and it will update the logs with the data that it will find, which is it does not find any data there. And after updating, the computed property is going to update that data in real time. So basically that is how it works, and that's how you can do a real-time filter, a data filter using vue.js and Laravel. So thank you so much. Maybe in the next video I can talk about how to generate these logs in real time. So I'll talk about how you can generate these logs when these are logs into the application and when they log out of the application.